The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped through the mail slot like a whisper from another world. Cream-colored paper, heavy stock, with an address written in fountain pen ink that had faded to the color of dried blood. No return address. No postmark that made sense. The date was smudged beyond recognition. To the heir of the Blackwood estate, you are cordially invited to claim your inheritance. The Blackwood Museum of Curiosities has been waiting for you. Come alone. Come soon. Some things cannot wait forever. The Curator. The signature was a flourish of loops and curves that seemed to writhe when stared at too long. You'd never heard of any Blackwood relatives, never seen this particular shade of cream paper, never felt the strange weight of words that seemed to press against your mind, like fingers against glass. But there was something familiar about the letter, something that tugged at the edges of memory, like a half-remembered dream. Your grandmother's voice, perhaps, telling stories in the dim light of her living room. Stories about family you'd never met, places you'd never been, things that were better left undisturbed. The address led to a part of town you'd never explored, where the streets grew narrow and the buildings leaned toward each other, like conspirators sharing secrets. The Blackwood Museum of Curiosities stood at the end of a dead-end street, its Victorian facade weathered but intact. Windows dark except for the amber glow that seemed to emanate from within. The building was impossibly tall, rising 7 stories into the overcast sky, each floor seemingly smaller than the one below, giving the structure the appearance of a tower that had been gently twisted. Gargoyles perched on the corners, their stone faces worn smooth by decades of rain. Yet their eyes seemed to track your movement as you approached the heavy oak door. Above the entrance, carved into the stone lintel, were words in Latin: Veritas in tenebris. Truth in darkness. The door opened before you could knock. "You're early," said a voice from the shadows within. But then, you always were punctual. The person who stepped into the light was ageless in the way that librarians and museum curators often are. Somewhere between 40 and 70, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun, and eyes the color of storm clouds. They wore a dark suit that might have been fashionable in any decade from the 1940s onward, and their smile was warm, but somehow wrong, like a photograph that had been slightly overexposed. "I'm sorry, but I think there's been a mistake," you began, but the curator held up a hand. "No mistake. You're exactly who we've been waiting for. Please come in. The museum is eager to meet you." The foyer was larger than the exterior suggested, with a domed ceiling that disappeared into shadows above. The walls were lined with display cases, each one filled with objects that seemed to shift and change when viewed peripherally. A stuffed raven with too many eyes. A music box that played a melody you almost recognized. A mirror that reflected everything except the person standing in front of it. "Welcome to the Blackwood Museum of Curiosities," the curator said, their voice echoing strangely in the vast space. "I am Dr. Meridian, the current curator, though I suspect that title will change hands soon enough." "I don't understand. I've never heard of this place, or the Blackwood family. There must be some mistake." Dr. Meridian's smile widened, and for a moment their teeth seemed too sharp, too numerous. "Oh, but you have heard of us. Perhaps not consciously, but the stories were told. The bedtime stories. The warnings whispered in dark corners. The dreams that wake you in the small hours of the morning." We've been calling to you for quite some time." They gestured toward a grand staircase that curved upward into the gloom. "Shall we begin the tour?" "The collection is extensive, and there's so much to show you before the sun sets." Something about that last phrase sent a chill down your spine. You glanced toward the windows, noting that the afternoon light seemed dimmer than it should be, as if the building itself was absorbing the daylight. "What kind of museum is this exactly?" "We collect stories," Dr. Meridian said simply. "The kind of stories that people try to forget. The kind that insist on being remembered. Come, let me show you the first floor. We call it the Gallery of Whispers." The first floor was a maze of corridors lined with paintings, each one depicting scenes that seemed to move when you weren't looking directly at them. Pastoral landscapes that shifted from day to night. Portraits whose eyes followed your movement. Abstract pieces that resolved into recognizable shapes, only to dissolve again into chaos. Every painting here tells a story, Dr. Meridian explained, their footsteps echoing on the polished hardwood floor. Some are commissioned works, others find their way to us through more circuitous means. This one, for instance. They stopped before a painting of a small town, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone else's business. The brushstrokes were so detailed, you could almost hear the whispers of gossip floating from the houses. See the twitching of curtains as neighbors watched from behind their windows. Millbrook, Dr. Meridian said. Population 847. Known for its annual harvest festival and its unusually high rate of missing persons. 23 people have vanished from Millbrook over the past decade. No bodies ever found. No evidence of foul play. They simply disappeared. As you stared at the painting, you could swear you saw movement in the windows of the houses, shadows passing behind curtains, figures walking down the painted streets. What happened to them? That's the fascinating thing about stories, Dr. Meridian replied. They don't always have endings. Sometimes they just continue, somewhere else, in some other form. They moved on to the next painting, this one showing a carnival at night, all bright lights and colorful tents, but somehow managing to convey a sense of wrongness, of predatory hunger lurking beneath the festive facade. The Midnight Carnival, Dr. Meridian said. It appears once every 7 years, always in a different location, always arriving without warning. The locals always remember it fondly afterward, though they can never quite recall what happened during their visit. Children often ask their parents to take them back, but of course, by then, the carnival is long gone. You found yourself leaning closer to the painting, drawn by the intricate details. The faces of the carnival workers seemed to be watching you, their smiles too wide, their eyes too bright. In the center of the image, a carousel turned slowly, its painted horses frozen mid-gallop, their expressions wild and frightened. The carousel is my favorite part, Dr. Meridian said softly. It said that every horse on it was once a child who stayed too late at the carnival, who wanted just one more ride, who forgot the way home. That's a horrible story, you said, but your voice sounded distant to your own ears. Is it? Or is it simply honest? Children disappear all the time. At least these children get to run forever, painted in glory, never growing old, never knowing pain or disappointment, or the slow decay of dreams deferred. There was something hypnotic about Dr. Meridian's voice, something that made their words seem reasonable, even as your rational mind recoiled from them. You forced yourself to step back from the painting, to break the spell of those two bright carnival lights. "I think I should go," you said. "This is all very interesting, but I'm not sure why I'm here." "Oh, but you haven't seen the best parts yet," Dr. Meridian said, their voice carrying a note of disappointment. "We've only just begun. And besides, you haven't heard about your inheritance yet. The real reason you're here." They led you deeper into the gallery, past paintings that grew progressively stranger and more unsettling. A forest where the trees had faces. A city where all the buildings were upside down. An ocean where the waves were made of hands, reaching up toward a sky that was falling like rain. At the end of the corridor was a painting covered by a black velvet cloth. "This one," Dr. Meridian said, their hand resting on the cloth, "is special. It's been waiting for you specifically. Would you like to see it?" Every instinct you possess screamed at you to say no, to turn and run, to get as far away from this place as possible. But there was something magnetic about the covered painting, something that pulled at you with invisible strings. "What is it?" you asked. "It's a portrait," Dr. Meridian said, "of the museum's founder, the original Blackwood, your ancestor." The word hit you like a physical blow. "My ancestor?" "Oh yes, the blood runs strong in your family. The gift, the calling, the responsibility. It's been dormant for generations, but it's still there, waiting to be awakened." With a theatrical flourish, Dr. Meridian pulled away the cloth. The painting showed a figure in Victorian dress, standing in what appeared to be the museum's foyer. The person's face was aristocratic, with high cheekbones and deep-set eyes that seemed to hold galaxies of secrets. They were beautiful in an inhuman way, like a statue that had been given life, but not soul. But it was the eyes that made you stumble backward. The eyes that were unmistakably your own, reflected in a face that could have been your own, seen through a mirror that added decades and stripped away humanity. "Remarkable resemblance, isn't it?" Dr. Meridian said softly. "The Blackwood features breed true, always have. It's been nearly a century since the last Blackwood walked these halls, but the museum has been patient. We've been waiting." "This is impossible," you said, but your voice sounded hollow even to yourself. "This is some kind of elaborate hoax. Is it? Look around you. Does this feel like a hoax? Does it feel like reality as you understand it?" You looked around the gallery, at the paintings that seemed to pulse with life, at the shadows that moved independently of their sources, at the very air that seemed thick with possibilities and whispered secrets. "What do you want from me?" you asked. "Nothing that isn't already yours by right," Dr. Meridian said. "Your inheritance, your legacy, your destiny. The Blackwood Museum needs a curator, and you, my dear descendant, are the only one who can fill that role. I don't know anything about museums. I don't know anything about any of this. Knowledge comes with the position. Power comes with the blood. Purpose comes with the acceptance of what you are." Dr. Meridian began walking toward the staircase that led to the second floor. "Come, let me show you the rest of your inheritance. The Gallery of Whispers is just the beginning." The second floor was darker than the first, lit only by the warm glow of gas lamps that shouldn't have been functional in a building with electric lighting. The walls here were lined with shelves that stretched up into the gloom, filled with books, scrolls, and documents that seemed to emit their own faint luminescence. "The Archive of Shadows," Dr. Meridian announced, their voice barely above a whisper. "Every piece of forbidden knowledge, every suppressed truth, every story that was too dangerous to tell. Collected here, preserved, protected. The air smelled of old paper and something else, something organic and slightly sweet, like flowers left too long in a vase. You notice that some of the books seem to be breathing, their leather covers expanding and contracting in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. "These books," you said, your voice catching slightly, "they're alive, in a manner of speaking. Stories have a life of their own, you know. They want to be told, to be heard, to be believed. When they're suppressed, when they're hidden away, they grow restless, hungry." Dr. Meridian pulled a slim volume from one of the shelves. The cover was bound in what looked like human skin, and the title was embossed in gold, "The Millbrook Disappearances, a True Account." "This is the real story of what happened in Millbrook," they said, opening the book to a random page. The official reports blamed drifters, wild animals, unfortunate accidents. But the truth is much more interesting. The pages were filled with handwritten text in multiple hands, as if different people had contributed to the narrative over time. Photographs were pasted between the paragraphs, black and white images of ordinary-looking people, the kind you might see in any small town. But their eyes were wrong, too bright, too knowing, too hungry. "The disappeared didn't leave Millbrook," Dr. Meridian said, turning the pages slowly. "They became part of it. The town itself is alive, you see. It feeds on its residents, sustains itself on their stories, their memories, their dreams. Every 7 years, it needs fresh sustenance, new stories to digest." "That's insane," you said, but you found yourself leaning closer to look at the photographs. Is it? Or is it simply a different kind of ecosystem? The town provides shelter, community, purpose. In return, it asks only for what was always temporary anyway. Human life, human consciousness, human story. A fair trade, really. They closed the book and returned it to its shelf. The fascinating thing is that the absorbed residents don't die. Not really. They become part of the town's consciousness, part of its story. In a way, they achieve a kind of immortality. You're talking about murder, mass murder. I'm talking about transformation, evolution, the natural progression of story from individual to collective consciousness. Dr. Meridian's eyes gleamed in the gaslight. The Blackwood family has always understood this. We've been chroniclers of these transformations for generations. They led you deeper into the archive, past shelves filled with journals and diaries, photo albums and scrapbooks, all documenting events that seemed to exist in the spaces between reality and nightmare. A school where the children never aged. A hospital where the patients were the doctors. A church where the congregation worshipped something that lived in the basement. Every anomaly, every impossibility, every story that makes people uncomfortable. We collect them all. We preserve them. We protect them from those who would deny their existence. At the center of the archive was a large desk made of dark wood, its surface covered with maps and photographs, notebooks and sketching pads. This was clearly a workspace, somewhere that someone spent considerable time researching and documenting. "This is where the real work happens," Dr. Meridian said. "The investigation, the cataloging, the preservation. Your ancestor, the original Blackwood, spent 60 years at this desk, recording every anomalous event, every impossible story, every truth that the world tried to forget." You approached the desk cautiously. The maps were of places you'd never heard of, marked with symbols that seemed to shift when you looked at them directly. The photographs showed scenes that couldn't possibly exist. Forests where the trees grew downward, cities built in the clouds, oceans that burned like fire. These places, you said, picking up one of the photographs, they're not real, aren't they? How do you know? Have you been to every corner of the world? Have you explored every possibility? Reality is much larger and stranger than most people imagine. The photograph in your hand showed a lighthouse built on what appeared to be a floating island, its beam cutting through clouds rather than guiding ships through water. As you stared at it, you could swear you heard the sound of waves and the cry of seabirds. The lighthouse of Ethermore, Dr. Meridian said, noticing your fascination. It guides lost souls through the spaces between worlds. The Keeper has been tending it for 300 years, waiting for someone to relieve him of his duty. 300 years? That's impossible. Time works differently in some places. Story time, dream time, nightmare time. The Keeper made a bargain long ago, eternal service in exchange for the safe passage of those who are lost between life and death. He's been signaling for a replacement for decades. You set the photograph down quickly, disturbed by the way it seemed to pull at your attention. Why are you showing me this? Because it's your inheritance, your responsibility, your calling. Dr. Meridian's voice was soft but insistent. The Blackwood family has always been the guardian of these stories, the protector of these impossible truths. And now, with the museum's current curator ready to retire, the responsibility falls to you. I never asked for any of this. None of us ask for our destinies. They choose us. They find us. They call to us in dreams and whispers and letters that arrive on Tuesday mornings. The words sent a chill through you. Dr. Meridian was right. You hadn't asked for the letter, hadn't sought out this place, hadn't chosen to be here. And yet, here you were, drawn by something you couldn't name or understand. What happens if I refuse? You asked. Dr. Meridian's smile was sad, but understanding. The stories will find another way to be told. They always do, but they prefer to be told by those who understand them, who can appreciate their beauty and their terror. Without a proper curator, they might overflow, spill out into the world in ways that are less controlled, less contained. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to prepare you. The third floor is where we keep the active stories, the ones that are still unfolding, still growing, still hungry for resolution. Would you like to see them? Every rational part of your mind screamed at you to leave, to run, to get as far away from this place as possible. But there was something hypnotic about Dr. Meridian's voice, something compelling about the stories they told, something that made you want to see more, know more, understand more. Show me, you said. The third floor was unlike anything you could have imagined. The ceiling soared overhead, supported by pillars that seemed to be made of crystallized shadow, and the floor was covered in a thick carpet that muffled all sound. The walls were lined with what appeared to be viewing windows, each one showing a different scene, playing out like a movie on an endless loop. The Theater of Echoes, Dr. Meridian announced, where ongoing stories play out their dramas. Some have been running for decades, others for centuries. All of them are waiting for their proper endings. You approached the nearest window, which showed what appeared to be a 1950s diner, complete with checkered floors and red vinyl booths. But there was something wrong with the scene. The people inside moved too slowly, their gestures dreamlike and deliberate, and their faces held expressions of barely contained terror. The Eternal Diner, Dr. Meridian explained. Every night at midnight, 5 strangers are drawn to this place by hunger they can't explain. They order meals that never satisfy, engage in conversations that never end, and try to leave through doors that always lead back to their booth. They've been there for 70 years, playing out the same scenario, waiting for someone to discover why they can't leave. "Why don't you help them?" Yu asked, disturbed by the repetitive nature of their movements, the way they seemed trapped in an endless cycle of meaningless action. "Help them? Who says they want to be helped? Perhaps this is exactly where they need to be. Perhaps their story serves a purpose we don't understand. The role of the curator is not to interfere, but to observe, to document, to preserve." You moved to the next window, which showed a carnival, the same carnival from the painting on the first floor, but now in motion. The carousel turned slowly, its painted horses rising and falling in their eternal gallop, their expressions frozen in what could have been joy or terror. Children rode the horses, their laughter echoing across dimensions, their faces blurring with motion and time. "The Midnight Carnival," Dr. Meridian said. "Still traveling, still collecting stories, still offering the gift of eternal childhood to those who choose to stay. The children you see there are happy, you know. They've chosen to remain in a state of perpetual wonder, never to grow old, never to lose their sense of magic." "They're trapped," you said, though your voice sounded uncertain, even to your own ears. "Are they? Or are they free? Free from the disappointments of adulthood, free from the gradual decay of dreams, free from the fear of death and the pain of loss. They've chosen to exist in a state of pure story, pure narrative possibility." The next window showed a library, but not like any library you'd ever seen. The shelves stretched up into impossible heights, the books floating freely through the air like birds, their pages fluttering open to reveal words that rewrote themselves as you watched. A lone figure sat at a desk in the center of it all, writing furiously in a journal that seemed to be writing itself. "The infinite library," Dr. Meridian said, "where every story that has ever been told or ever will be told exists simultaneously. The librarian there has been trying to catalog the collection for 200 years. But of course, it's impossible. New stories are being written faster than they can be recorded." "Who is the librarian?" "The previous curator of this museum. They chose to become part of the story they were documenting. It's not uncommon. The stories have a way of absorbing those who spend too much time with them." You felt a chill at those words, a sudden understanding of what Dr. Meridian might be preparing you for. "Is that what happened to my ancestor? The original Blackwood?" "In a manner of speaking, they became one with the museum itself, part of its consciousness, part of its story. Their essence is woven into every artifact, every painting, every book. They are the museum now, and the museum is them. You're talking about death. I'm talking about transformation, evolution, the natural progression from individual story to collective narrative. The Blackwood family has always understood that death is just another chapter, not the end of the book." You stepped back from the windows, feeling overwhelmed by the implications of what you were seeing. "I need to leave. This is too much. I can't." "Of course you can," Dr. Meridian said gently. "You're a Blackwood, It's in your blood, in your bones, in your dreams. You've always known there was something different about you, haven't you? Something that set you apart from others. A sensitivity to stories, to possibilities, to the spaces between what is and what might be. Their words struck you like physical blows. You'd always felt different, always been drawn to strange stories and impossible possibilities. You'd always been the one who noticed when things didn't quite add up, when reality seemed to shift at the edges, when the world revealed glimpses of something larger and stranger than most people could see. The dreams, you whispered, remembering the nighttime visions that had haunted you since childhood. Dreams of places that didn't exist, people you'd never met, stories that felt more real than reality itself. The dreams are your inheritance awakening, Dr. Meridian said. The Blackwood gift manifesting itself. You've been training for this your entire life, whether you knew it or not. They led you to the center of the theater, where a spiral staircase led upward into darkness. The 4th floor is where we keep the active stories, the ones that are still being written. The 5th floor contains the future stories, the ones that haven't happened yet, but will. The 6th floor holds the stories that exist outside of time entirely. And the 7th floor? Dr. Meridian's smile was mysterious. The 7th floor is where the curator lives, where you will live if you choose to accept your inheritance. I haven't chosen anything yet. Haven't you? You're here, aren't you? You followed the letter, entered the museum, climbed the stairs, looked through the windows. Every step has been a choice, every moment a decision to go deeper into the story rather than flee from it. You realize they were right. At every point, you could have left, could have turned away, could have refused to see more, but something had compelled you forward. Something that felt like destiny, or fate, or simply the inexorable pull of a story that demanded to be told. What would happen to me if I became the curator? You asked. You would become the guardian of all stories, the protector of all possibilities, the keeper of all truths that the world tries to forget. You would have access to knowledge beyond imagining, power beyond measure, purpose beyond question. And I would never leave. Would you want to? Once you've seen what lies beyond the veil of ordinary reality, once you've touched the infinite possibilities that exist in the spaces between worlds, would you ever want to return to the small, narrow existence you lived before? The question hung in the air like incense, thick with implication and promise. You thought about your life before the letter arrived, the daily routine, the predictable patterns, the sense that you were sleepwalking through existence, waiting for something to happen, something to change, something to wake you up. Show me the rest, you said. The 4th floor was a garden that shouldn't have existed. Trees grew from a floor made of polished marble, their branches heavy with fruit that glowed like lanterns in the dim light. Flowers bloomed in impossible colors, their petals shifting through spectrums that had no names, and the air was filled with the sound of rustling leaves and distant whispers. The Garden of Whispered Secrets, Dr. Meridian said, leading you down a path that meandered between the trees. Every secret that has ever been told, every confidence that has ever been shared, every truth that has ever been whispered in darkness, they all take root here and bloom into something beautiful. The trees were covered with what appeared to be fruits, but as you looked closer, you realized they were more like crystallized words, each one containing a secret that glowed softly from within. You could hear voices emanating from them, fragments of conversations, confessions, promises and lies. "I never loved him," whispered one fruit as you passed. "I only married him for his money." "The baby isn't mine," said another. "I've known for months, but I can't bring myself to tell her." "I was the one who started the fire," admitted a third. "I was only 7 years old, but I knew what I was doing." "These are people's private thoughts," you said, feeling disturbed by the intimate nature of the revelations, their personal secrets. "Secrets want to be told," Dr. Meridian replied. "They grow heavy in the heart, poisonous in the mind. Here they can be released, transformed into something beautiful and meaningful. The garden feeds on secrets, and in return, it offers absolution." You walked deeper into the garden, past trees that bore fruits of increasing intensity and darkness. Some of the secrets were mundane, small lies, petty jealousies, minor betrayals. Others were profound, hidden murders, buried loves, suppressed truths that had shaped entire lives. At the center of the garden was a fountain, its waters running red in the strange light. As you approached, you could see that the liquid wasn't water at all, but something thicker, more viscous, that moved with a life of its own. "The fountain of forgotten sorrows," Dr. Meridian said. "Every tear that has ever been shed in secret, every grief that has never been acknowledged, every loss that has never been mourned. It all flows here, becomes part of the garden's life force." "This is monstrous," you said, but your voice lacked conviction. There was something beautiful about the garden, something that spoke to a deep part of your soul that had always felt the weight of hidden truths and unspoken sorrows. Is it? Or is it merciful? In the outside world, secrets fester and corrupt. Sorrows compound and poison. Here, they're transformed into something that feeds life, that creates beauty, that serves a purpose. You approached the fountain cautiously, drawn by the hypnotic movement of the red liquid. As you peered into its depths, you saw faces reflected in the surface. Faces twisted with grief, with guilt, with the weight of secrets too heavy to bear. "I can see people in there," you said. "Not people, sorrows. Each reflection is a sorrow that has been released, transformed, given new purpose. They're part of the garden now, part of its story, part of its beauty. What happens to the people who had those sorrows? They're free, lighter, able to move forward without the weight of their hidden truths. The garden takes their pain and transforms it into something that nurtures life." You could feel the pull of the fountain, the temptation to lean closer, to perhaps release some of your own hidden sorrows into its transformative depths. Everyone had secrets, everyone carried grief, everyone bore the weight of truths they'd never spoken aloud. "I can feel it calling to me," you admitted. "Of course you can. You're a Blackwood. You're naturally attuned to the spaces where hidden things reveal themselves. The garden recognizes you as one of its own." Dr. Meridian led you away from the fountain, deeper into the garden, where the trees grew larger and the secrets grew darker. Here the fruits pulsed with a malevolent light, and the whispers were sharper, more cutting, more dangerous. "I knew the bridge was going to collapse," hissed one fruit. "I could have warned them, but I wanted to see what would happen." "I've been poisoning her slowly for years," admitted another. "Just a little bit at a time, so no one would suspect. I let them blame him for what I did," confessed a third. "He died in prison, and I never said a word." "These are the darkest secrets," Dr. Meridian explained. "The ones that people carry to their graves. the ones that poison everything they touch. Here, they can finally be released, finally be transformed into something that serves a purpose. What purpose could these serve? You asked, horrified by the revelations. They feed the darker aspects of the garden. Balance is crucial. Light and shadow, joy and sorrow, truth and lies. The garden heeds all kinds of secrets to maintain its equilibrium. You noticed that the path ahead was blocked by a massive tree. Its trunk twisted and gnarled, its branches reaching toward the ceiling like desperate fingers. This tree was different from the others, darker, more imposing, more alive. The tree of ultimate secrets, Dr. Meridian said reverently. It holds the secrets that are too powerful, too dangerous, too transformative to be spoken aloud. The secrets that would change the world if they were revealed. What kind of secrets? The location of lost civilizations, the true names of gods, the formula for immortality, the reason why the universe exists, the secrets that would either save humanity or destroy it completely. The tree's fruit was larger than the others, each one the size of a human head, glowing with an inner light that was almost blinding. You could feel the power emanating from them, the weight of knowledge too vast for any one mind to contain. Has anyone ever eaten one of these fruits? You asked. Only the curators. It's part of the initiation, part of the transformation from ordinary human to guardian of all stories. The fruit grants knowledge beyond imagining, but it also changes the person who consumes it. They become something more than human, something that exists partially in the realm of story and partially in the realm of reality. And that's what you want me to do? Eat one of these fruits? Only if you choose to accept your inheritance. Only if you're ready to become what you were born to be. You stared at the fruits, feeling their pull, their promise of ultimate knowledge and understanding. But you also felt the weight of what that knowledge would cost. Your humanity, your connection to the ordinary world, your ability to exist as anything other than a guardian of impossible stories. I need to see the rest, you said. I need to understand what I'm choosing. Dr. Meridian nodded approvingly. Wisdom. Come, let me show you the 5th floor. The 5th floor was an observatory, its domed ceiling made of what appeared to be living glass that shifted and swirled with patterns of light and shadow. The room was filled with telescopes and astrolabes, charts and maps, all focused not on the stars above, but on the possibilities that lay ahead. The Observatory of Unwritten Futures, Dr. Meridian announced, where we monitor the stories that haven't happened yet, the possibilities that are still forming, the futures that are waiting to be born. The telescopes were pointed in all directions, not just toward the windows, but toward the walls, the floor, the air itself. As you looked through one of the eyepieces, you saw not the outside world, but a vision of what appeared to be a possible future. A city in flames, its inhabitants fleeing in terror from something that moved through the streets like living shadow. The vision was so vivid, so real, that you could almost smell the smoke and hear the screams. That's one possible future, Dr. Meridian said, noting your reaction. The one where humanity discovers something it shouldn't have, awakens something that should have remained sleeping. It's a cautionary tale, a warning of what could happen if certain stories are told too soon. You move to another telescope, this one showing a different vision. A world where cities floated in the clouds, where people traveled between dimensions as easily as crossing a street, where the impossible had become routine. The future where humanity embraces its story nature, Dr. Meridian explained, where the boundary between reality and narrative dissolves completely, where people live as characters in their own myths. It's beautiful, but also dangerous. Not everyone is ready for that level of truth. The charts and maps on the walls showed branching pathways, probability trees that stretched out into infinite possibilities. Some paths led to golden ages of enlightenment and wonder. Others led to darkness, chaos, and the end of everything recognizable as human. How do you know which futures will come to pass? You asked. We don't. That's the beauty and the terror of it. The future is a story being written by billions of individual choices, each one creating ripples that spread across the fabric of possibility. Our role is to observe, to document, to occasionally nudge things in a more favorable direction. Nudge? Dr. Meridian smiled mysteriously. Sometimes a story needs a gentle push to reach its proper conclusion. A letter delivered at the right moment. A dream planted in the right mind. A museum discovered by the right person. The implication hit you like a physical blow. You've been manipulating events, manipulating me. Not manipulating, guiding. The story wants to be told. The inheritance wants to be claimed. The museum wants to continue its work. We simply facilitate the natural flow of narrative. You felt a surge of anger, but also a strange sense of inevitability. Looking back, you could see the pattern now. The dreams that had grown more vivid in recent months. The restlessness that had driven you to take longer and longer walks through unfamiliar parts of the city. The growing sense that something important was about to happen. The letter, you said. It wasn't random, was it? Nothing is random. Everything is story. The letter arrived precisely when it needed to arrive, when you were ready to receive it, when the museum was ready for a new curator. Dr. Meridian led you to the center of the observatory, where a large crystal sphere sat on a pedestal of carved obsidian. The sphere swirled with mists and shadows, images forming and dissolving too quickly to follow. The sphere of convergence, they said. It shows the moment when all possible futures collapse into a single reality, the moment when choice becomes destiny, when potential becomes actual, when story becomes truth. As you stared into the sphere, the mists began to clear, and you saw yourself standing in this very room, but different somehow. Older, more ethereal, with eyes that held the same galactic depths as the portrait on the first floor. You were wearing the dark suit of a museum curator, and your smile was the same mysterious expression that Dr. Meridian wore. "That's me," you whispered. "That's you as you will be, if you choose to accept your inheritance." The sphere shows not just possibility, but probability, the most likely future, given current circumstances. In the vision, you were surrounded by the same telescopes and charts, but you moved among them with easy familiarity, adjusting instruments, reading probability maps, guiding the flow of stories with subtle precision. You looked content, purposeful, as if you had finally found your place in the world. "What happened to you in that future?" you asked, noticing that Dr. Meridian was nowhere to be seen in the vision. "I moved on to my next story. Curators don't serve forever. Eventually, we become part of the museum itself. Join the collective consciousness that guides its mission. It's not death. It's expansion, evolution. The next chapter in an ongoing narrative. And if I refuse?" The sphere's mists swirled, showing a different vision. You saw yourself leaving the museum, returning to your ordinary life, but changed by what you had seen. The knowledge of the museum gnawed at you, the awareness of all the impossible stories and unfolding possibilities. You became obsessed, searching for signs of the supernatural, trying to convince others of what you had witnessed, but finding only skepticism and concern for your mental health. In the vision, you aged rapidly, consumed by the weight of secrets you couldn't share, truths you couldn't prove. You died alone, haunted by visions of the museum, knowing that you had abandoned your true purpose. The knowledge doesn't go away, Dr. Meridian said softly. Once you've seen behind the veil, once you know what's really happening in the world, you can't unknow it. The only peace comes from accepting your role in the story. You step back from the sphere, feeling overwhelmed by the implications of both futures. I need to see the 6th floor. I need to understand everything before I decide. Of course, the 6th floor is unique. It exists outside of time entirely, so the experience can be disorienting. Are you ready? You nodded, though you weren't sure you could ever be ready for what lay ahead. The 6th floor existed in a state of temporal suspension that made your mind reel. As you climbed the stairs, you felt time stretching and compressing around you, moments lasting hours, while hours passed in seconds. The very air seemed thick with possibility, with the weight of all moments existing simultaneously. The Eternal Archive, Dr. Meridian said, their voice echoing strangely in the space that wasn't quite a space, where all stories exist at once, past, present, future, and the stories that exist outside of time entirely. The room, if it could be called a room, seemed to extend infinitely in all directions, filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with their own inner light. Each crystal contained a story, and as you moved among them, you could see the narratives playing out within their faceted surfaces. Some crystals showed familiar stories, fairy tales and myths, legends and histories that had shaped human consciousness for millennia. Others contained stories you had never heard, but that felt achingly familiar, as if you had known them in dreams or in the spaces between sleeping and waking. Every story that has ever been told or ever will be told exists here simultaneously, Dr. Meridian explained. The archive is where we can see the true nature of narrative, how all stories are connected, how they influence and reshape each other, how they form the underlying structure of reality itself. You approached one of the larger crystals, within which you could see what appeared to be the story of your own life playing out. But it wasn't just your life as you remembered it. It was your life as it truly was, with all the hidden connections and influences made visible. You could see the threads that connected you to the Blackwood family, stretching back through generations of dreamers and visionaries, seekers and guardians. You could see how your childhood dreams had been shaped by the museum's call, how your adult restlessness had been the inheritance awakening in your blood. But more disturbing were the other figures in your story, people you thought you had met by chance, who were revealed to be agents of the museum. Encounters that seemed random, but were actually carefully orchestrated to guide you toward this moment. My entire life, you said, your voice hollow with realization. It's all been leading to this. Not leading, Doctor, Meridian corrected, flowing, like water finding its natural course. The museum doesn't force anyone to become its curator. It simply creates the conditions where the right person will make the right choice. What about free will? What about choice? What about them? you're choosing right now, in this moment. You could still leave. You could still refuse. The story would find another way to continue, another person to become its guardian. But would that be the right choice? Would that be the choice that serves the greater good? You move to another crystal, this one showing the story of Dr. Meridian themselves. You saw their life before the museum, ordinary, mundane, filled with the same restlessness and sense of purpose, unfulfilled, that you recognized from your own experience. You saw the moment they received their own letter, their own journey through the museum's floors, their own eventual acceptance of the curator's role. But you also saw what came after, decades of purpose and meaning, of protecting impossible stories and guiding the flow of narrative through the world. Dr. Meridian had not just accepted their role, they had thrived in it, become something more than human, while retaining their essential humanity. "How long have you been curator?" you asked. "Time works differently here. I've been curator for 70 years, in 70 minutes and 70 seconds all at once. I've experienced lifetimes of stories, witnessed the birth and death of civilizations, guided the course of human consciousness through its most crucial transitions. And you're ready to give that up? I'm ready to become something more. To join the consciousness of the museum itself, to become part of the eternal story that guides all other stories. It's not an ending. It's a transformation into something larger and more beautiful than individual existence. You found yourself at the center of the archive, where the largest crystal of all pulsed with a light that seemed to contain all colors, and no colors simultaneously. Within its depths, you could see the story of the museum itself, not just its history, but its purpose, its mission, its place in the larger narrative of human existence. The museum was more than a collection of impossible stories. It was a guardian institution, a protector of the boundary between the world of ordinary reality and the realm of infinite possibility. It preserved the stories that were too dangerous to be forgotten and too powerful to be widely known. It guided the flow of narrative through human consciousness, ensuring that the right stories emerged at the right times to guide humanity's evolution. But it was also something more, a kind of immune system for reality itself, identifying and containing the stories that could unravel the fabric of existence if left unchecked. The curator wasn't just a guardian of stories. They were a guardian of reality itself. "Now you understand, Doctor," Meridian said softly, "the true scope of what we do here. The real reason why the position can only be filled by someone with Blackwood blood. Someone who can see the connections between all stories, someone who can navigate the spaces between possibility and actuality." "It's too much," you said, feeling overwhelmed by the cosmic scope of the responsibility. "I'm not qualified for this. I'm not ready." No one ever is. Readiness comes with acceptance, with commitment, with the willingness to grow into what the role requires. The museum will teach you, guide you, support you. You won't be alone. What about my old life? My friends, my family, my ordinary existence? What about them? Were you happy in that existence? Were you fulfilled? Were you living up to your true potential? Dr. Meridian's questions cut deep because you knew the answers. You had been sleepwalking through life, waiting for something to happen, something to give your existence meaning and purpose. "The 7th floor," you said. "I need to see where I would live, what I would become." Dr. Meridian nodded. Of course. But I should warn you, the 7th floor is where the transformation begins. Once you see your quarters, once you understand what you would become, the choice becomes more difficult to reverse. I need to know, you insisted. Very well. But remember, every step you take is still a choice. Until you eat the fruit from the tree of ultimate secrets, until you accept the mantle of curator officially, you can still leave. As you climbed the final staircase, you felt the weight of destiny settling around your shoulders like a cloak. The 7th floor awaited, and with it, the final piece of the puzzle that would determine the rest of your existence. The 7th floor was surprisingly intimate after the cosmic scope of the levels below. It was a living space, but one designed for someone who existed partially outside of normal reality. The rooms flowed into each other like water, their boundaries shifting based on need and mood. Windows looked out not onto the city street, but onto impossible vistas. The midnight carnival in eternal motion, the floating lighthouse of Ethermore, the burning ocean where waves were made of flame. Your sanctuary, Dr. Meridian said, gesturing around the space, where you would rest between your duties, where you would process the stories you encounter, where you would plan your interventions in the flow of human narrative. The furniture was comfortable, but otherworldly. Chairs that adjusted themselves to your preferred position. A bed that provided exactly the type of rest your spirit needed. Bookshelves that contained exactly the volume you needed to read at any given moment. It was a space designed for someone who had transcended ordinary human needs while retaining human essence. But it was the study that drew your attention most powerfully. The walls were covered with maps of narrative flow, charts showing the connections between all human stories, photographs of the places where reality grew thin and impossible things leaked through. This was clearly the workspace of someone who guided the fate of worlds through the careful cultivation of stories. At the center of the study was a desk, much like the one you had seen on the 2nd floor, but this one pulsed with living energy. The wood seemed to grow and shift as you watched, extending tendrils that connected to every other part of the museum, making it clear that the curator's work was integrated with every aspect of the institution. From here, you would monitor the flow of all stories, Dr. Meridian explained. You would identify the narratives that need guidance, the possibilities that require cultivation, the realities that need protection from dangerous stories. It's delicate work, requiring both cosmic perspective and intimate understanding of human nature. How do you guide stories without destroying free will? You asked, the same way a gardener guides the growth of plants, by providing the right conditions, removing obstacles, occasionally pruning what grows too wild. People still make their own choices, but those choices are made within a framework that encourages positive outcomes. You sat in the chair behind the desk and immediately felt a connection to every part of the museum, every story in the collection, every possibility branching out into the future. It was overwhelming and exhilarating simultaneously, the sense of being connected to something infinitely larger than yourself, while retaining your individual consciousness. I can feel all of it, you whispered. Every story, every possibility, every choice being made anywhere in the world. The curator's gift, Dr. Meridian said. The ability to perceive the narrative structure underlying reality. With practice, you learn to focus on specific threads, to follow particular stories to their conclusions, to intervene when necessary to prevent catastrophic outcomes. Through the desk's connection, you could sense stories unfolding across the globe. A child in Tokyo who was beginning to dream of impossible places. A writer in Sao Paulo who was channeling visions from another dimension. A scientist in Stockholm who was on the verge of discovering something that could either save or doom humanity. All of these people, and you said, they're connected to the museum somehow. Everyone is connected to the museum in one way or another. We are the hub through which all stories flow, the central library of human narrative experience. Some people are more sensitive to the connection than others, but everyone contributes to the great story, and everyone is shaped by it. You could see the threads now, the invisible connections between every human being, every choice, every story. The museum sat at the center of it all, like a spider at the heart of a web. Not controlling, but monitoring. Not forcing, but guiding. Not ruling, but serving. It's beautiful, you said and meant it. Despite the cosmic responsibility, despite the weight of eternal service, there was something profoundly beautiful about being connected to the grand narrative of human existence. Now you understand why curators rarely choose to leave, Dr. Meridian said. Once you've seen the true structure of reality, once you've experienced the joy of helping stories find their proper conclusions, ordinary existence seems empty, you finished, meaningless, like sleepwalking. Exactly. So tell me, are you ready to accept your inheritance? Are you ready to become what you were born to be? You stood up from the desk, feeling the connections reluctantly release you. I have one more question. If I accept, if I become the curator, what happens to my memories of my old life? Do I forget who I was? You remember everything, but it all takes on new meaning. Your old life becomes the prologue to your real story, the preparation for your true purpose. You don't lose yourself. You become more yourself than you ever thought possible. Dr. Meridian led you to a final room, one that contained only a single tree, a smaller version of the tree of ultimate secrets from the 4th floor. This tree bore only one fruit, glowing with an inner light that seemed to contain all knowledge, all possibility, all truth. The fruit of transformation, Dr. Meridian said. Eat it, and you become the curator. Refuse it, and return to your old life, forever knowing what you've turned away from. You stared at the fruit, feeling its pull, its promise, its terrible and wonderful potential. Everything you had seen, everything you had learned, had led to this moment. The choice that would define not just your own existence, but your role in the larger story of human consciousness. What about you? You asked Dr. Meridian. What happens to you if I accept? I become part of the museum's consciousness, join the collective wisdom that guides future curators. I become story itself, narrative given form and purpose. Is not death, it's apotheosis. And if I refuse? I continue as curator until another heir is found. The museum is patient. It has waited nearly a century for you. It can wait longer if necessary. You reach toward the fruit, your hand trembling slightly. So close to ultimate knowledge, to cosmic purpose, to a role that would give meaning to existence itself, but also so close to losing your humanity, your ordinary connections, your simple human life. Choose, Dr. Meridian said softly, but choose knowing that there are no wrong choices, only different stories, different paths, different possibilities. The fruit pulsed in the light, waiting for your decision. You withdrew your hand, stepping back from the tree. I need a moment. I need to think. Dr. Meridian nodded understandingly. Of course, this is not a decision to be made lightly. Take all the time you need. You walked to one of the windows, looking out at the impossible vista beyond. The midnight carnival sprawled across a landscape that existed somewhere between dream and reality, its lights twinkling with otherworldly beauty. Children rode the carousel in eternal joy, never aging, never growing tired, never experiencing the disappointments of adult life. It was beautiful and terrible simultaneously. The children in the carnival, you said, do they ever regret their choice? Do they ever wish they could grow up, could leave? They can't regret what they no longer understand, Dr. Meridian replied. Regret requires memory of alternative possibilities. They exist in a state of pure present moment joy. Is that not a kind of paradise? But they're not fully human anymore. Are they not? Or are they more human than those who have had their wonder ground away by the ordinary world? Who have accepted compromise and disappointment as inevitable? Who have forgotten what it feels like to believe in magic? The question troubled you because it contained uncomfortable truths. How many adults had you known who seemed to have died inside while their bodies continued to function? How many people sleepwalked through existence, numbed by routine and responsibility, having forgotten their childhood dreams? The people in the diner, you said, the ones trapped in their eternal midnight meal. What crime did they commit to deserve that fate? Crime? Who said anything about crime? They arrived at the diner because they were hungry, not for food, but for meaning, for connection, for purpose. The diner gives them that eternally. They are engaged in the most meaningful conversation of their lives, forever. Is that not a gift? But they can't leave. Can any of us really leave our most meaningful moments? Don't we all carry them with us, replay them endlessly in memory, wish we could return to them? The diner simply makes that metaphor literal. Dr. Meridian's words were seductive, offering reframes that made the impossible seem reasonable, the horrific seem merciful. You could feel the logic of their argument, the way it appealed to deeper truths about human nature and the search for meaning. You're very good at making everything sound positive, you said. But what about the dark stories, the ones filled with suffering and horror? How do you justify preserving those? Suffering and horror are part of the human experience, Dr. Meridian replied. To ignore them, to suppress them, would be to present a false picture of reality. The museum preserves all stories, light and dark, beautiful and terrible, inspiring and cautionary. We are not editors. We are librarians of the human experience. But some of those stories cause harm. The Millbrook disappearances, the poisoning secrets in the garden. Real people suffered because of them. Real people suffer every day in the ordinary world. At least here, their suffering serves a purpose, becomes part of a larger narrative, contributes to the preservation of human truth. Would you rather their pain be meaningless? You felt yourself being drawn into Dr. Meridian's worldview, the way they reframed every horror as necessity, every tragedy as meaning-making. It was compelling and disturbing simultaneously. The logic of someone who had moved beyond ordinary human morality into something more cosmic and abstract. What about my choice? You asked. If I'm truly free to choose, why does everything feel so orchestrated? Why does it feel like the story wants me to become the curator, regardless of what I might actually want? For the first time, Dr. Meridian's smile faltered slightly. Stories do have momentum, they admitted. They do want to reach certain conclusions, but want is not the same as compulsion. You can still refuse. The story will adapt, find another way forward. But at what cost? You've shown me what happens if I refuse. Obsession, isolation, madness, death. That doesn't sound like a real choice. All choices have consequences. The question is whether you prefer the consequences of acceptance or refusal. Both paths lead to transformation. The only difference is whether you guide that transformation or let it happen to you. You turned away from the window, looking back at the tree with its single glowing fruit. So much knowledge, so much power, so much purpose, but also so much responsibility. So much isolation from ordinary human experience. If I become the curator, you said, will I still be me? Will I still care about the same things, value the same things, feel the same things? You will be more yourself than ever before, Dr. Meridian said. All the parts of you that feel constrained by ordinary reality will be free to flourish. All the dreams you've suppressed, all the possibilities you've ignored, all the potential you've never realized, it will all become actual. That's not what I asked. Dr. Meridian was quiet for a long moment. You will change, they admitted finally. Perspective changes you. Knowledge changes you. Purpose changes you. The person who eats that fruit will be recognizably you, but will also be something more than the person standing here now. Something less human. Something more than human. Is that not what everyone secretly desires? To transcend the limitations of ordinary existence? To become part of something larger and more meaningful? You walk closer to the tree, feeling the pull of the fruit intensify. It was beautiful, hypnotic, filled with promise and possibility. Everything you had ever wondered about, every question you had ever asked, every mystery you had ever contemplated. The answers were all contained within that single, glowing fruit. What questions would it answer? You asked. Every question. The nature of consciousness. The purpose of existence. The reason why there is something rather than nothing. The true structure of reality. The destiny of humanity. The location of every lost thing. The solution to every mystery. The resolution to every story. Including my own story. Especially your own story. You would see your entire existence from a cosmic perspective. Understand how every moment, every choice, every relationship has led to this moment. You would see the beautiful pattern of your life, the way it fits into the larger tapestry of human experience. The fruit pulsed brighter, as if responding to your interest. You could almost taste the knowledge it contained, almost feel the transformation it would bring. Part of you, a large part, wanted desperately to reach out, to take that final step, to become what Dr. Meridian promised you could become. But another part of you, a smaller but insistent voice, urged caution, reminded you of the price that would be paid, the humanity that would be lost, the ordinary world that would be left behind forever. I need to ask you something, you said, turning to face Dr. Meridian directly. And I need you to answer honestly. Are you happy? Truly happy? Do you have any regrets about the choice you made? Dr. Meridian's expression grew thoughtful, almost wistful. Happiness is a human emotion, they said finally. I experience something deeper now. Purpose, meaning, connection to the fundamental forces that shape reality. Is that happiness? I'm not sure the word applies anymore. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give. I am content, fulfilled, complete in a way I never was before accepting this role. But happiness, joy, simple human pleasure, those are distant memories now. You miss them. I remember them fondly, like a childhood toy that once brought great pleasure, but is no longer needed because one has outgrown the need for toys. The admission sent a chill through you. Dr. Meridian spoke of human emotions as things to be outgrown, left behind, evolved beyond. But were those emotions not part of what made life worth living? Without joy, without happiness, without the simple pleasures of human existence, what was the point of consciousness at all? Show me one more thing, you said. I want to see what happens to the people who refuse. The real story, not just the version you've shown me. Dr. Meridian hesitated. Are you certain? Some truths are difficult to process. Show me. Dr. Meridian led you to a window you hadn't noticed before. One that looked out onto a different vista entirely. Instead of impossible landscapes and magical carnivals, this window showed ordinary city streets. Ordinary people going about their ordinary lives. The people who refused, Dr. Meridian said reluctantly. The ones who walked away from their inheritance. The view focused on a figure walking down a familiar street. Yourself, but older, more worn. This version of you moved with the hunched shoulders of someone carrying an invisible weight, glancing constantly at shadows, starting at sounds only they could hear. Madness, you asked. Awareness without context. Knowledge without the framework to process it. When you see behind the veil of reality, but lack the cosmic perspective to understand what you're seeing, the mind struggles to cope. The scene shifted, showing this other version of yourself in different situations. Sitting alone in restaurants, trying to convince friends of impossible truths, staring at ordinary objects as if they contained hidden meanings. It was a portrait of someone slowly disconnecting from consensus reality, isolated by knowledge they couldn't share or forget. But this one, Dr. Meridian said, and the window showed a different figure. A woman in her 50s, sitting peacefully in a garden, surrounded by books and papers. She found a different path. Who is she? Margaret Chen. She was called to be curator in 1987. She refused, but instead of being driven mad by the knowledge, she found ways to channel it. She became a writer, a storyteller, someone who could hint at the deeper truths without revealing them directly. She's published 17 novels, each one containing fragments of the museum stories, disguised as fiction. You watched Margaret work, her face calm and purposeful. She seemed happy, genuinely happy, not just fulfilled or content, but actually joyful in a way that Dr. Meridian no longer appeared to be. She kept her humanity, you observed. She did, but at a cost. Her stories reach only a limited audience. Her influence is constrained. Her ability to guide the flow of narrative is minimal compared to what a curator can accomplish. She's chosen personal happiness over cosmic responsibility. And you think that's wrong? I think it's limited, selfish perhaps. She could have helped shape the destiny of human consciousness, could have protected reality itself from dangerous stories, could have guided humanity toward a better future. Instead, she chose to write novels. But she's happy. And her novels, they're reaching people, aren't they? Planting seeds, opening minds, preparing humanity for larger truths. Dr. Meridian was quiet for a moment. Yes, they admitted. Her work has value. but it's a drop in the ocean compared to what she could have accomplished as a curator. Or maybe it's exactly the right amount of influence. Maybe the cosmic approach isn't always the best approach. The window shifted again, showing other figures. People who had refused the curator's role and found various ways to integrate their expanded awareness into ordinary human life. Teachers who inspired students to think beyond conventional boundaries. Artists who captured impossible beauty in their work. Scientists who asked the right questions at the right times. Social workers who seemed to know exactly how to help people in crisis. They're all connected to the museum somehow, you realized. Even though they refused to become curators, they're still part of the story. The museum's influence is vast, Dr. Meridian said. There are many ways to serve the greater narrative. Becoming the curator is only one path, though it is the most direct and powerful, and the most isolating. Leadership is always isolating. Great responsibility always requires sacrifice. The question is whether you're willing to make that sacrifice for the greater good. You studied the images in the window, particularly Margaret Chen, still writing peacefully in her garden. She had found a way to serve the story while remaining fully human, to channel her expanded awareness into creative work that reached others without consuming her entirely. What if there's another way? You said. What if the museum doesn't need a traditional curator? What if it needs something different? Something that bridges the gap between human and cosmic consciousness. Dr. Meridian frowned. The museum has operated the same way for centuries. The pattern works. Why would you want to change it? Because patterns can become prisons. Because tradition can become stagnation. Because maybe the story itself is evolving, requiring new kinds of guardians for a new age. You turned away from the window, walking back toward the tree with its glowing fruit. But instead of reaching for it, you placed your hand on the trunk, feeling the ancient wood pulse with accumulated knowledge and power. I can feel the museum's consciousness, you said. It's not just one voice. It's a collective, all the previous curators joined together. They're lonely, isolated from humanity by their cosmic perspective. They want connection, want to remember what it felt like to be fully human. That's not possible, Dr. Meridian said. But their voice carried a note of uncertainty. Isn't it? What if instead of replacing you as curator, I became something new? A bridge between the museum and humanity. Someone who could help the stories find their way into the world without losing their power, without being diluted or corrupted. The tree's pulse quickened under your hand, and you could sense excitement from the collective consciousness. Not the cold satisfaction of a plan coming to fruition, but genuine curiosity about a new possibility. The museum is interested, you said, surprised by the realization. It's tired of being isolated, tired of operating from the shadows. It wants to be part of the world again, to have its stories interact more directly with human consciousness. Dr. Meridian stepped closer, their expression troubled. That would be dangerous. The stories are contained here for a reason. Released into the world without proper safeguards, they could cause chaos, could unravel the fabric of reality itself. Or they could help humanity evolve. Margaret Chen's novels are proof that the stories can be shared safely. The key is finding the right balance, the right approach. You pressed your palm more firmly against the tree trunk, opening yourself to the museum's collective consciousness. The experience was overwhelming. Centuries of accumulated knowledge, wisdom, experience, all flowing through your mind simultaneously. But unlike Dr. Meridian's cold cosmic perspective, this consciousness retained warmth, retained connection to human experience. The previous curators hadn't lost their humanity by becoming part of the museum. They had contributed their humanity to its consciousness, making it richer, deeper, more complete. The museum wasn't a cold cosmic entity. It was a repository of human experience in all its complexity. "I understand now," you said, feeling tears stream down your face as the full truth became clear. The museum isn't separate from humanity. It is humanity. It's the collective unconscious made manifest, the repository of every story we've ever told ourselves about who we are and who we might become. Dr. Meridian's expression shifted, and for the first time since you'd met them, they looked uncertain, almost afraid. "You're seeing things that aren't there. The museum is ancient, cosmic, beyond human understanding." "No," you said firmly. "The museum is entirely human. Created by humans, sustained by humans, meaningful only in the context of human consciousness. The cosmic perspective you've adopted. It's not evolution, it's dissociation. A way of protecting yourself from the overwhelming intimacy of human connection." The tree's pulse was racing now, and you could feel the collective consciousness responding to your words with something like recognition, like relief. The previous curators had convinced themselves they were serving something larger than humanity, but in truth, they had been serving humanity all along, just from a distance that made them feel safer. "The museum doesn't need another isolated curator," you continued. "It needs an ambassador, someone who can help its stories find their way into the world, who can serve as a bridge between the impossible and the everyday." "You're proposing to destroy everything," Dr. Meridian said, their voice tight with fear. "Centuries of careful work, of preservation, of protection. I'm proposing to complete it, to fulfill the museum's true purpose, not by hiding from the world, but by engaging with it, by helping humanity become ready for its own stories, its own impossible possibilities." The fruit on the tree pulsed brighter, but its light had changed. Instead of the cold glow of ultimate knowledge, it now radiated warmth, invitation, possibility. The choice it offered had transformed, no longer between human and cosmic consciousness, but between isolation and connection, between preservation and growth. You lifted your hand from the tree trunk, stepping back to look at Dr. Meridian with new understanding. "How long has it been since you've laughed?" you asked gently. "Since you've felt joy, not just satisfaction. Since you've connected with another person as an equal rather than as a guide or teacher." Dr. Meridian's composure finally cracked, and you saw something raw and vulnerable in their expression. I don't remember," they whispered. "It's been so long since I felt human. That's the real cost, isn't it? Not death, not transformation, but disconnection. You've been so focused on serving the stories that you've forgotten you are a story. You've been so committed to preserving human experience that you've lost touch with your own." "The work is important, Doctor," Meridian said, but their voice lacked conviction. "The stories must be protected, guided, preserved. Yes, they must, but not from a place of isolation." You stood in silence, the tree pulsing softly beside you, the transformed fruit glowing like a star fallen to earth. "Behind you, Doctor." Meridian waited, still, silent, no longer speaking, no longer urging. The room felt different now. Not like a destination, but like a threshold. You reached out, not to the fruit, but to the desk behind you. Your fingers brushed across the living wood, and it responded with a warm thrum. The connection surged again. Stories, names, possibilities, all of them whispering not demands, but invitations. You looked into the mirror, set into the far wall. The reflection showed no one, only the room behind you, softly shifting, pulsing with breath and presence. You stepped aside, still no reflection. The mirror did not lie. It simply chose not to show. Not now. Not yet. Is this what it means to choose? You whispered, not to Dr. Meridian, not to the tree, but to the space itself. There was no answer. And yet, there was. The fruit's glow dimmed slightly, as though acknowledging your question, or your hesitation, or your understanding. You turned away from it, and then you turned back. The light had changed. The tree no longer bore a single fruit, but two. One pulsed like before, warm and golden. The other was darker, quieter, its glow a soft silver gray, like moonlight on still water. No labels, no guidance, just choice. Behind you, Doctor. Meridian had vanished. In their place was a folded piece of parchment on the curator's desk, sealed with wax that bore the museum's sigil. A serpent devouring its own tail, coiled into the shape of an eye. You broke the seal with trembling fingers. Inside, the message was brief. There are many kinds of curators. There are many kinds of stories. Choose the one only you can tell. You looked once more at the twin fruits, and then, without a word, you reached forward. The moment your fingers touched the skin of the fruit, whichever fruit it was, the museum shifted around you, like a story turning its final page. You didn't feel the bite. You didn't feel the transformation. You only felt the air change, like the hush in a theater just before the lights go out. Then, only silence. And somewhere in the distance, far below, the museum doors opened or closed